All right, let's take a look at the history of posters. And posters are one of the most effective ways to grab attention, and they also help to communicate a message, and they've been doing so for centuries. And we're going to take a look at it, its evolution throughout time. We know that posters are unlike other forms of design because it needs to make an immediate impact. Let's say you're driving down the highway and you look at a billboard or a sign, and boom, you have to have that info instantly. Or you're walking down the street, same thing, or on a bus downtown. We're not going to stop and analyze them the way that we might, a book cover or a website. It has to be a fast way to get the info to the viewer. So the best posters are going to distill their message into a simple and unforgettable composition. And it's also going to balance the visual appeal with clean and clear communication. Beyond their function, posters are also historical artifacts. You can think of them as like a collector's item of our times, and they're going to reflect the social and cultural movements of their time. So, for example, a propaganda poster from World War II has a really different feel from, say, a 1960s psychedelic rock poster, but both of them are serving as a snapshot of their era. So let's just think about this from a historic perspective, and sort of like how we're saying in the first unit, where we're sort of putting our contemporary ideas on something that's a bit more ancient. But the principles are going to remain the same. So let's see it from like the Egyptian point of view. And our hieroglyphs, these were our inscriptions on the wall and our slab stones. This advertised our laws, our royal decrees, our public events. And these early visual messages functioned similarly to posters. Although they were carved mostly rather than printed. We did have papyrus back then also, which is sort of like paper-like material, but at least it was portable, and you get your ideas on that also. In the Tang Dynasty, we were seeing printed materials that were used to spread Buddhist teachings, official decrees, and even advertisements. And if this is something that you're interested in and want to look up, check out the Diamond Sutra. And while this might not be a poster in our modern sense of the term, it is showing that a large-scale print communication was happening in China centuries before Gutenberg. In the Song Dynasty, we're seeing commercial advertising in China expand. This is our printed posters. We're promoting tea, medicine, theatrical performances, and our shops are using bold calligraphy and illustrations to attract customers. And this is similar to what we see with the Western broadsides. Ancient Rome and Greece, we saw this with our column of Trajan that we've already talked about. We're going to see edicts, promotions, public announcements, like our gladiator games for the event promotions. You're also going to see painted wall advertisement, graffiti style, and you're going to see these in places like Pompeii. And these are acting like, early posters for businesses and entertainment. So we have the monumental blending with the more advertisement-based style. Medieval Europe, we're seeing handwritten notices, we're seeing illustrated proclamation, and this is ways that we can share our information. And we talked about this in the type unit, where the church and the monarchy used those illuminated manuscripts written by monks for our books, and also public notices just to inform our citizens. So again, communication outputs. We had woodblock prints. These just weren't art. They're also used for our advertising, and it's also going to greatly impact the Impressionist era. And we're going to see Toulouse-Lautrec from the later, post-Impressionist period, looking at these and evolving them into his own poster design. By the Edo period, the kabuki theaters, sumo wrestling events, and businesses, they're also using colorful prints to attract customers. When we open up to Western influences, we're going to see local artists blending those woodblock prints with the European lithographic techniques. And we'll talk about lithography in a second. So we're also seeing sort of like how Japanese art influenced Impressionists. We're also going to see how, this mix of, printed goods with Japanese aesthetics is going to give rise to what we're going to see as the first modern advertising posters in Japan. So lots of exchanges of ideas in this period. So just understanding I'll call it the evolution of the posters, like advertisement in some format. This also means understanding how graphic design has changed alongside the history, the politics, and technology of whatever time we are going to be dealing with. So let's take a look at this. And I'm going to say this is the poster in the sense, the term that we think of a poster. And in this case, it's the 19th century and the introduction of lithography, which we are going to chat about. And posters, as we know them today, wouldn't exist without lithography. Before all this period, it was text heavy, it's wood blocked, it's labor intensive, and there were visual limitations. But lithography and later chromoliths, so chromo, many, color lithography, this is going to change everything. So we're going from like the heavy wood block print to something that has multiple colors, basically in this span of time. This technique is going to allow for posters to be mass produced. It's going to make them more widely accessible, and it's also going to help them become a part of our everyday life. And what exactly is lithography? And lith is a printing technique that allows for mass production of images. It's invented in 1796 by Seinfelder, who's a German playwright, but he was looking for a cheap way to print his scripts. And there's sources for this where you can read up on that side of things. And at its core, it works on a really simple principle where we're going to draw onto a flat stone with an oil-based medium. This is typically like a grease or a wax. The plate, or the stone in this case, is then treated with water, which adheres only to the areas that aren't covered in the oily drawing. And so that when the ink is rolled over the plate, it's going to stick to the greasy part of the design, but it's going to be repelled in the wet areas. And so when you put that paper against the plate, it's going to transfer that image. And this method is going to allow for sharper, more detailed prints than wood blocks. You're also going to be able to have like a watercolor technique, a little bit more gradients with it. And when we get color lithography, we're going to have multiple colors instead of just one or two. All right, so just so you can see a visual on this, the stone is on the right with the grease drawing, and then the print on the left is the pull from that. For the sources, this one's interesting. It's from the Met, and you can go through the whole process and see it from start to finish visually. So why is this important? Because it's, before this, it was really slow and it was super expensive. But lithography is going to make it possible to mass produce the colorful posters at a much cheaper cost. And this is also in turn going to lead to the rise of modern graphic design in the 1800s. Because we have the ability to mass produce things, you're going to have a need from the advertisers to make more products. So one of the first artists that we're going to see to use this new technique is Charest, and these posters, he's often called the father of the modern poster. In the late 19th century, he's combining the bold type, super expressive imagery, and you're often going to see elegantly dressed women in motion, and this is blurring that line between advertising and art. And we're going to see this in a couple of the earlier eras of poster design. And this is his Bal au Moulin Rouge. And, it's the perfect example of what we're talking about, our hierarchy. We know it's at the Moulin Rouge. There's our imagery. And then we have our subheaders at the bottom, so you know exactly when and where it is. We can see where this is going to impact the designs later down the line of someone like Toulouse-Lautrec. And again, this is who they're looking at for references and inspiration later down the line. Just a few more examples of his. And you're going to notice these are multicolors. So what ends up happening is if you have just a black and white poster, you only need one lithographic stone. If you need 3 colors, then you're going to need 3 lithographic stones. And then you just work on that stone for that color. And that's how you're getting multiple colors in this era. From there, we evolve it a little bit further into the Art Nouveau, and this is a really popular period even today to look back on. And this is taking our poster design to a whole new level. And this is going to be in the late 19th and early 20th century, and this is going to be really organic. We're going to see organic forms, flowing lines, and intricate details. Mucha is one of the ones that we're going to probably think of first when we think of Art Nouveau posters. Um, his signature style is going to impact a lot of designers from here on out. We're going to see flowing lines, floral patterns, idealized ethereal women, and it's often promoting, say, theater performances, luxury goods, decorative arts. And this is going to extend way beyond advertising. We're going to see it in advertising, architecture, design, fine art, furniture. You'll see lamps in this style and sculpture, and it's going to help shape the Art Nouveau movement worldwide. This is his advertisements. You're going to see two of these. They're actually for a cigarette company. Let's just pop to the other one so that we can sort of see it. But all of his have a really, similar style. The flowing hair, the organics, the repeating motifs, the patterning. And again, the women in these sort of ethereal-like poses. And again, another poster design from his. And again, advertising their products. Really organic, colorful, and flowing. Grasset, another one. He's taking the same concepts that we're seeing, but he's going to work with it more in an ornamental design, and it's going to have a sort of medieval and botanical influence to it. Unlike what we were seeing with Mucha, there is more of an outlining to it, and it almost has like a stained glass feel to it. But again, the same motifs are present. Same thing, the motifs are present with Defure, and this is a French artist and designer, and he's going to blend Art Nouveau with symbolism. His work is often more, mysterious and dreamlike, but we still have the female figures, the elegant flowing forms that we're seeing in the other pieces as well. And just another example of his so that we get a sense of their style. And Livemont, this is a Belgian artist, and he's known for his detailed decorative posters. And again, women surrounded by flowers and patterns. And his style is sort of similar to Mucha's, but it's going to have its own sense of precision to it and use of, we can see that sort of ombre gradient in the background. So it's going to have a bit more of a lighter feel to it. And this is advertising absinthe. And then we get to the Toulouse-Lautrec. So again, post-impressionist, where all of this is sort of coming together. And he is an artist and designer who is bringing the nightlife of Montmartre, Paris to life with his work. So we're going to see, the cabarets, the music, the movement, the energy, and the performance. And unlike traditional painters, where, you're looking for the dimension and form, he's actually flattening it out because he's getting influence, like we said earlier, on the Japanese woodblock prints. So he's bringing that and the Art Nouveau style together. So this is sort of the merging of those two styles. And his work just didn't advertise events. It's also, like we've been seeing, it's taking the design and it's turning it into an art form. And again, the Art Nouveau period, it wasn't just about aesthetics. This is a reaction against industrialization, where the emphasis is on the craftsmanship and artistry versus, the industrial and mechanical world. And the influence of this is extending beyond graphic design, as we said, into architecture, furniture, fashion, sculpture, etc. So there's a lot going on this period, but it's a really great period for posters and poster design advertisements. All right, so what happens when we start using our posters as political and social tools? Well, that's what's going to be happening in the earliest 20th century. In the earliest 20th century, we're going to see posters become powerful tools for political movements, social change, and wartime propaganda. Governments and organizations are starting to realize that if you have a really nicely designed poster, it could help mobilize people, it could shape public opinion, and even shift the course of history. So let's take a look at the Russian constructivism and the avant-garde periods. After the Russian Revolution, constructivist artists, and the two we're going to specifically be looking at are Lissitzky and Rodchenko. They're going to use the posters to push socialist ideals. So it's bold, it's direct, it's often geometric, and it uses stark colors, usually red, black, and white color schemes. And the first one we're going to look at is Lissitzky. This is the Beat the Whites with the Red Wedge, done in 1919. Instead of doing something like, what we were seeing with Art Nouveau, the figurative aspect, or, dealing with flourishes or illustrations. We're instead using abstract shapes and symbols that's going to represent the Bolshevik struggle at this time. And we're going to see that echoed in Rodchenko's. Same thing. The colors, the sort of wedge-like appearance, simple, to the point communication with the type. This is 1924. It was made as books, and there is an alternative title, Books, Please, in All Branches of Knowledge. And this is featuring a woman shouting through the megaphone, and this is pushing the importance of literacy and education. So, these posters weren't just aesthetically pleasing, they are also calls to action. So if you're walking down the street and you saw this, you would have some sort of response that would make you want to, go forth and, in this case, get some books. From this, the Bauhaus is going to have some inspiration from what we're seeing, with the geometrics, the simplification of colors and type. And this is the Bauhaus and the functionalist poster designs. And the Bauhaus school in Germany is taking a look at what exactly is good design and, how can you expand upon it. So we're going to see posters from the Bauhaus designers like Bayer, and we're going to see it focused on simplicity, clarity, and really strong typography. And they're stripping away, again, the unnecessary decoration. There are no flourishes like we saw with Art Nouveau. But we're using the grids, the sans serif fonts, and well-balanced compositions. So just to take a look at Bayer, I did include one of his typefaces so that you can see, how his typeface is sort of echoed within all of his and the upcoming designs. And this is the universal typeface. It's sans serif and it's lowercase only. And like his typeface, his posters are really clean. The layouts are clean. It's bold. It's functional design, and the emphasis is on clarity and readability. And we're going to see this in his Kandinsky exhibition poster from 1926. And this is a perfect example of this functional approach. It's clean lines, minimal type. It's really well structured. It's using that grid. And remember, you can tilt the grid a little bit if you so desire. And it's going to make the message and whatever it is you're trying to communicate really easy to absorb. And this emphasis on clarity is going to go into what we're going to see with Swiss design next, and also modern advertising. And this is where it's getting its roots from, this period. Because people working in the Bauhaus are going to be forced to leave during World War II, and then most end up in Americas and work at schools in the States, and then their ideas, in turn are taught and then turn into the design of, the 50s, 60s, and beyond. This is a poster for a slide lecture on architecture from 1926. And again, the grid, simple, minimalized colors, efficient and easy to read. Bayer, whenever he came stateside, this is what his work sort of evolved into. Again, simple, to the point, easy to read. Schmidt, he's a typographer and a graphic designer, and he's he's created one of the most popular Bauhaus posters. It's red, it's black color scheme. It's using those geometrics, and again, having a little bit of fun with the type while keeping it readable. His work is going to embody the constructivist side that we were just looking at before this, and he's going to merge it with the Bauhaus. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, this is a Hungarian artist, and he also was a professor in the Bauhaus. And what's interesting with him is his explorations go into photography and the photo montage, where it also blends the photos with type, and also his compositions are really geometric and abstract in style. And what's cool with him, like I said, he's taking photography, bringing it into poster design. So it's breaking us away from that traditional use of illustration within posters. All right, so from these influences, it evolves into the Swiss style. And like we were saying previously, when the pendulum swings, it probably is going to swing the other way. So we had a little bit of chaos in our world, so we're going to, in turn, create structure and efficiency in our designs. So we're building on the foundations laid in the Bauhaus, but the Swiss design is going to come in the mid 20th century as a response for the need for clarity, simplicity, and functionality within graphic design. This is also going to be known as the International Typographic Style, and it has had a profound influence on the graphic design world, and it sets the standard for modernist design principles that are going to emphasize precision, readability, and harmony. And we are still exploring it today. A lot of people are working in the Swiss style and the international type style. So this could be something that you are working on in your studies. All right, so where did this come from? The 50s and the 60s, it's going to be spearheaded by, designers like Müller Brockmann, Meininger, Frutiger. It's going to be rooted in the Bauhaus, but it's also going to be influenced the work of Swiss designers like Ernst Keller, which we're going to see in a second here, where again, it's clarity, it's essential, and it's grid-like. All right. So again, grid-light. It's efficient. It's minimal distractions. They're going to use sans serif typefaces, typically asymmetrical compositions, and a really bold use of type. So how do you communicate, information with the maximum efficiency and minimal distraction? We're going to do this with the grid. And the grid is, again, that invisible structure underneath whatever it is you're creating. It's going to provide structure and consistency to your compositions. And it's going to allow for precise alignment of the elements. That's going to make everything easy to read across whatever media it is that you're working in. Type is going to play a huge role in this period. And the designers are going to mostly go towards the sans serif typefaces. That's our Helveticas, the Universe, the Accidents Grotesque. Because it's clean, it's neutral, and it's legible even at small sizes. And yes, you can read or watch it all in Helvetica. I know we chat about it a lot, but it's really interesting because it does go over, the hows and whys of the evolution of this typeface in this design period. The colors, we're seeing the same trends. It's, pretty minimal. It's leaning towards black, white with one or two accent colors. Again, just to maintain visual clarity and coherence. So who exactly are the key players? We talked about Keller, so let's take a look at his work. He's teaching at the Zurich School of Arts and Crafts, where he emphasized functionality, clarity, and precision in design. And we're going to see grids, we're going to see sans serifs, and asymmetrical. And again, this is what's defining later of what we think of as the Swiss graphic design. But one thing that's interesting with Keller is he's not going to stick to one single aesthetic. He's going to encourage instead problem solving through design. So adapting the style based on the message and the audience. And he's going to be working in corporate identity, poster design, and typography. And the literal translation is lace and linen embroidery from the collections of the Winterthur and Zurich commercial museums. And again, we're using the grid to simplified colors. But one thing I always think that's interesting with this is it has an almost, non-machine-like feel to it. It has a more handwritten approach to it while still maintaining the structure. The translation for this, botched tooth, botched health, dental technician initiative, no. And again, a totally different style, but again, communicating to that audience. Müller Brockmann, we've seen his work a few times, but now it's the time to sort of connect the dots for his work. He's a Swiss graphic designer and educator, and he's known for his work in poster design and visual communication. And he's a central role in the popularization of the international style. Again, clean typography, grid, and bold. We can see the trend with all of this. And we're going to see his posters in particular for the Zurich Town Hall Concert Hall and the Swiss National Exhibition. So we're going to check those out just so we can see. The one on the left is slightly different, only because it has more photo montage vibe to it, but the ones in the middle and right sort of are the classic Müller Brockmann, where we can see the grid on the right. We talked about the one on the right with the radial style composition, which is tricky because it's like everything comes in on that circle, so your info's in the middle. But again, clean, efficient, and easy to read. You can go from your main hierarchical focal point and then flow through the info from one to the other Same thing with this. Clean, efficient, minimal color based upon that grid. Based upon the grid, clean, minimal, efficient, and easy to read. So, clarity will be key for all of this. And the same thing, working within that grid, building the shapes on top of it, and then your type in alignment with that. And it's really simple and easy to read. Armin Hoffman, he's teaching or taught at the Basel School of Design, and he mentored numerous of the designers who went on to be, leading designers that we chat about even today. And, it's very formal. It's the clarity of communication and an innovative use of type. And we're going to see these for theaters and museums as well. This is sort of like the classic poster that is the go-to for this period, for Gazelle, the ballet. And again, you know what it is, you know what they're doing, and you know the when and the where. So all the info you need is easy to get at, like we were saying with the billboards going down the highway. You have 3 seconds, get all the info. Perfect. That's exactly what this is doing. Same thing with this. Based on the grid, black and white, minimal, efficient, easy to read, and everything's aligned, just so. So it's sort of like locked on that page. Same thing for the theater. And then we have the year for the theater. And again, it's the info that you need to get the point across for your design. And again, working within that grid structure, clean, minimal, and efficient. And we do have a photographic element with his William Tell poster, but we are still working within that grid-like structure. We get that sense of hierarchy, and it's telling us what we need to know and where we would need to go for this show. Wim Krauwel, he's a Dutch graphic designer, and he is really known for his grids and type. And this is what we would call the gridnik. Like, you are purposefully working and doing the dance within the grid. He is a co-founder of the Total Design Studio, and he also played a key role in shaping Dutch graphic design in the mid-20th century. It's really geometric, it's minimal, and it's clear and easy to read. And it's very, as we said, grid-like. For this, maybe for a magazine, a newspaper, you're somewhere between 6 to 12 columns per page. But what happens if you double or triple that? So you have a lot of lines that you can sort of do this dance between. So it's really structured, it's really formal, and it's, just here's the title, this is the where and the when. It's getting your message across as cleanly and as efficiently as you can. Same thing with this. Everything's all aligned within that grid, and it fits and anchored on that page perfectly. So, of course, we have to have a reaction to this. If everything is in order, perhaps we should make it a little chaotic again. So in the mid-1900s, we're going to see posters in pop culture, and this is around the 1950s through 70s, and this is akin to the pop art era. And while we're not chatting in this unit about Andy Warhol, he's the go-to for the pop art movement, where it's consumerism, it's capitalism, it's products. It's a little bit more fresh and rebellious. We're going to be breaking away from the traditional, and we're going to embrace, bold mass media, commercial aesthetics. This is going to be highly influenced by advertising, comic books, celebrity culture. Pop art posters are going to blur the lines between art and consumer culture. So what are some of the key characters? The key characteristics, it's going to be bright. It's going to be colorful. There's going to be a lot of repetition with mass production aesthetics. This is going to be inspired by something like factory-made goods. And if we think about Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans, this is that era. We're going to see the comic book style outlines and halftone printing. If you're in art, this is the Roy Lichtensteins of our world. This is influenced by newspaper and magazine prints. This is the incorporation of the pop culture icons. This is the celebrities, the advertisements, the brand logos. And there is going to be a lot of irony, humor, and critique of consumer culture. Peter Max is going to be the first one we look at, and this is he's going to lay the groundwork for what we're going to see later down the line for the more psychedelic art and pop culture movements. And this is going to be our counterculture movements of the 60s. They're really bold, they're really colorful. They're on posters, album covers, clothing, merchandise, they're on pretty much everything. And it's going to capture that spirit of the era. And with him, the emphasis is peace, love, and self-expression. I put a link to his website and I put a link to his Instagram so you can look at their work. But you can see it has that sort of dreamlike surrealist quality, which the psychedelic movement encapsulates. And just another one of his, and there's the source again for that. His archive is really in depth. I just, for our examples, grabbed the ones that were a little bit more of his more popular imagery. Then we move to Glazier, who is making more, fun and playful images within his poster designs. He's most known for his I Heart New York logo, but he's also, working with records and music and poster design, and he's pulling his inspiration from the pop art movements. And again, he's incorporating the elements of mass culture and consumerism into his designs. So we see this with the Bob Dylan poster, and in turn, albums. This is one of his, most well-known, I'd say, images. I mean, you can see the Peter Max psychedelic sort of influence, but again, it's sort of graphic. It's, like an autograph is your signature, and that's how your design sort of comes out on the page. Like, only you can create your own style, and Glazier sort of took that influence and turned it into his own. The Mahalia Jackson, same thing. We're seeing it as posters, but again, we are seeing it as album art also, because music, design, and art all sort of are talking to each other. So from this, we get to the psychedelic posters of the 60s and 70s, and this is the time of social revolution. We have our counterculture movements, experimental art, and all of this is going to be reflected in our poster designs at this time. And this period was influenced by Art Nouveau, op art, and surrealism in particular. All right, so what are some of the key characteristics of our pop art posters? We're going to see distorted, swirling type, and it's often going to feel like it vibrates off the page. This is that op art sort of vibe to it, because in the next point, we're going to see some complementary color schemes, which is going to cause that vibration. And the colors are going to be high contrast and intense. We're going to see a lot of abstract, fluid shapes, hallucinatory imagery, and we're going to see influences from Eastern spirituality, nature, and mysticism. And we're going to see that it's closely tied to, like we were just saying previously, to music. So rock music in this case from San Francisco, where we're going to see artists like Wilson, Moscoso, Mouse Griffin. They're going to be creating posters for the Fillmore and the Avalon Ballroom. And we're going to see bands hosted there like the Beatles, and this is going to be their later years. This is the Sgt. Pepper's Yellow Submarine era. We are going to see a lot of examples from the Grateful Dead's, where it's like the music and branding are going to be deeply tied to that psychedelic aesthetic. And we're also going to see posters, say, from Hendrix, Joplin, The Doors, and Jefferson Airplane. Wes Wilson is going to be one of the most popular in this era, and he has the wavy, distorted lettering style that becomes the sort of hallmark for this movement. And while the posters almost look illegible at first, what he's basically doing is making the viewer spend a little bit more time absorbing that design. So again, we're using those complementary colors. We have our red and green. And instead of seeing it, and like we were saying with the billboard, you have 3 seconds. Everything has to be right there in your face, easily digested. This is the opposite of that. We always have our 1% deviation in the world. And for this, he wants you to spend more time with it. He wants you to go line by line, shape by shape, and figure out what's going on there. So it's more of an experience versus just an all in your face. And again, more of an experience so that you spend a little bit more time with it. Same thing. The colors, again, we were talking about that vibrancy. They're a bit jarring. So you have to sort of spend a little bit more time to see what's going on in it. So this is the posters that become like the art piece collectibles that you would, hang on to and keep on your walls. And again, I said we'd be chatting about also the Grateful Dead. So there's some of their more classic ones from this era. And then we get to Rick Griffin, and he's bringing in more of the surrealism to this. So it feels more like a comic book influence, really organic. But again, we have the vibrant colors. They created some of the most recognizable Grateful Dead imagery, and also in this case, the Jimi Hendrix ones. And again, all in this unique style. I recommend you go to his site and check out his other work. Moscoso, again, another psychedelic poster artist, and he's known for his clashing colors and his unusual hallucinatory typography. Unlike many of his peers, he actually did have training formally in graphic design, and he used this to create those high energy posters. You know, he did it for The Doors, Big Brother, and the Holding Company, and the Fillmore also. Stanley Mouse, again, we sort of have that classic Art Nouveau Deco blend with illustration. We're going to see it for the Grateful Dead, Journey, the Steve Miller Band. Like we've said, music, art, and design, they sort of all intertwine and influence each other. He used a lot of skeleton imagery, and it's going to be synonymous with the San Fran rock scene in this era. From there, we evolve into the punk and the DIY poster scene. This is the 1970s through the 80s, and this is that period of rebellion. So if the psychedelic era was the excess, the punk rock is about, you know, the posters, they're stripping everything down. The punk movement of the 70s, 80s, they're anti-establishment, they reject the corporate, they don't want the polished layouts, and they don't want to use the traditional advertising aesthetics. You know, they want the DIY. Often these are created with scissors, glue, and photocopiers. You're going to see collaged elements, so it might have newspapers, ransom note typography, or if it is anything illustrated, it's going to be rough and hand-drawn. Everything's going to have like a bold confrontational message that is actually going to reflect punk's raw energy and anti-mainstream ethos. And again, you're going to see it as black and white photocopied prints. And this is great because it's going to be cheap and it's going to be easy to distribute. And these weren't just for the bands. They're not just being designed for the bands. The bands and the fans are the ones doing the designing. So this DIY approach is going to democratize graphic design, and it makes it accessible to anyone with a photocopier and that rebellious spirit. And we're going to see this again later when we get to publication design with the zine. They're very similar in their zeitgeist. So let's just look at some of these iconic posters and designers. And again, this is setting the stage for the grunge, the zine culture, and street art. And even today, the rough cut and paste punk aesthetic influences designers working with protest posters, indie music, and the underground art scenes. Jamie Reed, the mastermind behind the Sex Pistols aesthetic, he's best known for the ransom note typography, the ripped paper collage style. His designs for God Save the Queen and Anarchy of the UK have become some of the most iconic punk visuals. So they really capture the movement's raw anti-establishment energy. Just so you can see another sample of this. Pettibon, same deal, hand-drawn black and white illustrations. We're going to see his work through Black Flag, Minuteman, and Sonic Youth. They're dark, they're cryptic, they're politically charged text. And again, it's all adding to that raw underground visual identity. Just so that we can see the Sonic Youth cover. This is one of the more popular ones visually. And then we get to the digital age, the 70s through literally right now. And this is, you know, the early era. This is our Photoshop revolution. You know, we're seeing tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, CorelDRAW, Alta Super Paint, Quark, etc. So we're moving from the hand-drawn to the screen printed to the digital tools. This is going to allow for layered compositions. We're going to be able to blend photos, type, and illustration, which is really key for this era. You can get hyper-realistic visuals and digital painting that's going to replace, you know, the hand, you know, traditional, I'll say, the traditional printing techniques. So if you have a printer, you can print it yourself now. You don't have to go to an offset printer to do it. The grunge aesthetics, this is our David Carson era, is going to be really popular, as well as our experimental typography a la Paula Scher. This is going to be especially true in music and in magazine design. And this era is going to set that foundation for the modern digital design era. so that posters can be edited, resized, and shared more efficiently than ever before. One of the pioneers of this is April Greiman, and she was one of the first to really embrace the digital tools. And she used the early Mac computers to create layered, really textured visually posters, and this is in the 1980s. She also helped bridge that gap between the Swiss and the new possibilities of what you can do with the digital design, and this made her one of the key figures in postmodern graphic design. Just to get an idea of some of her posters, the sources, just this one here has the archive and the source, so be sure to click on that. Does It Make Sense is one of the first ever digitally created posters. This is the front and the back of that poster, and it's blending pixelated images, overlapping text, computer grade or generated effects, layers, layer styles, opacities, etc. Some more of her poster designs and some more. So you can sort of see how that bitmappy early 80s vibe is coming through, but that's just where the tools were at that time. And again, more with the imagery and the type. So you can see that's the late 90s. This was, what, 83-ish through the 90s. So you can see how it evolved just that little bit. We chatted about David Carson, but we'll just, talk about him a little bit here for his posters. We're going to see him working with bands also. And for this one of his more iconographic ones are the 9 Inch Nails series. He's distorting type. He's layering the text. He's fragmenting images. They're chaotic. They're definitely rejecting the traditional grid-based layouts that we were seeing with the Swiss and the international style. This is less about clarity and more about emotion and instinct. And this is really going to influence the next generation of designers even through today. Just to get some ideas of that, again, thinking about for this poster, what if the type becomes, again, more of a visual image element than just type itself? Same thing with this. Chop it up, cut it up, rearrange it, and see how it works from there. Sagmeister is going to take the handmade, surreal, and digital elements of his posters. It's going to be more of a personal and provocative output. It's going to make you want to think a little bit more. He wants to challenge, what you think a design is. So we're going to use some more unconventional materials. We're going to use type, and then we're also going to have photography used in a more conceptual way. With Paula Scher, we've looked at her also. Again, we're blending that hand-drawn, chaotic type with some structured layouts for her poster design. And if you're interested in flexible branding, I always send students to her for this because, these are all for the public theater, the posters for the shows, but how do you make, each individual show feel individual while also working within that sort of mainframe of the main theater? So type is really key for that. And just some more examples of her poster designs. And now we're going to go to the present. So the 2010s to present, we're going to, work with the online world now. So, we're thinking about social media probably first rather than, say, printing it out and putting it in the downtown. So we're using Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those. And we're going to turn posters instead into more viral graphics. And these are often used for activism, branding, as well as entertainment. They're going to be minimalist, they're going to be bold, and they're going to be instantly readable. So the activism posters are going to help, this is great because it's going to spread rapidly online. But we're also going to see it for music, festival, and event posters. And again, it's designed for Instagram posters over necessarily just print, which is something new that we haven't seen before. One to look at for this is Shepherd Fairies. This is the We the People series, and this is viral both online and at protests. Netflix works with this well. Again, it's the poster sort of echoing back to movie posters, but again, easily shareable online. And a lot of people in this era were reproducing that sort of vibe also. Music festivals, online events, posters, This changed how posters were actually designed for concerts. So instead of focusing on like what we were just seeing, those intricate illustrated posters for print, now we're seeing things that are specifically made for social media. So from music to movies to activism to advertising, we're seeing that posters have shaped, how do we actually experience our culture today? And a well-designed poster isn't just an announcement. Like we said, it's a snapshot of a movement, an idea, or a moment. So it could be a vintage film, it could be an art piece, or a digital graphic that's shared online. Posters remain one of the most powerful and accessible forms of design today.